The notification chimed through Marcus Kane's neural implant. Just as he was elbow-deep in the guts of a damaged hyperdrive core, the sound made him pause, grease-stained fingers hovering over a cluster of burnt-out plasma conduits. He rarely received priority messages at his salvage yard on the rim of civilized space. And even more rarely did they come from the Hegemony Council. "Juno, what's the message?" He called to his AI companion, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. The holographic projection of a young woman materialized beside his workbench, her blue-tinted form flickering slightly. "Priority delivery notification. Marcus, a Hegemony transport is requesting landing clearance. They're carrying a gift." Marcus frowned, pushing a strand of dark hair from his forehead. At 32, he'd learned to be suspicious of gifts, especially from the galaxy's ruling faction. "What kind of gift?" "The manifest is encrypted, but there's a personal note from Counselor Thane. It mentions your service during the Kepler Station incident." The memory hit him like a punch to the gut. 3 years ago, when pirates had attacked the civilian station, Marcus had used his modified freight hauler to evacuate families trapped in the outer ring. He'd saved nearly 200 lives, including Counselor Thane's daughter. The man had promised a reward, but Marcus had refused it, wanting nothing to do with Hegemony politics. Apparently, the counselor had other ideas. 20 minutes later, the sleek black transport settled onto his landing pad with barely a whisper. Marcus watched from his workshop doorway as the cargo bay opened and 3 figures emerged. 2 were standard Hegemony guards in their intimidating crimson armor, but the third made him step back in surprise. The being was clearly Zeltharian One, of the warrior species that had been conquered by the Hegemony decades ago. She stood nearly 6 feet tall, her lithe frame marked by the telltale signs of her people, skin that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on the light, elongated limbs that spoke of both grace and deadly efficiency, and the intricate biomechanical augmentations that all Zeltharian soldiers received. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The female Zeltharian swayed on her feet, her usually perfect posture broken. Dark fluid blood, Marcus realized, seeped from poorly healed wounds along her arms and neck. Her augmentations sparked intermittently, casting brief shadows across her angular features. Most disturbing of all were her eyes. Once they would have glowed with the fierce amber light of her people, but now they were dim, clouded with pain, and something that looked like resignation. One of the guards stepped forward, his voice amplified by his helmet's speakers. "Marcus Kane, Counselor Thane sends his regards and this token of appreciation for your heroic actions." Marcus found his voice. "She's not a token, she's a person." The guard's helmet tilted slightly, as if the concept confused him. This unit was scheduled for termination. Genetic modifications proved unstable. Combat efficiency declined below acceptable parameters. The counselor thought you might find entertainment value in the specimen before final disposal. The words hit Marcus like ice water. They were talking about her like she was a broken piece of equipment. He looked at the Zeltharian female again, noting the way her hands trembled slightly, the careful way she held herself as if every breath caused pain. Her eyes met his for just a moment, and in them he saw something that made his chest tighten. Intelligence, awareness, fear. "What's her name?" Marcus asked quietly. "Designation, Nix 77 Alpha. Previously served in the Hegemony's 4th Pacification Fleet." "I asked for her name, not her designation." The guard paused, consulting some internal database. Records indicate no registered personal nomenclature. Standard practice for combat units. Marcus felt anger building in his chest, hot and familiar. The same rage he'd felt watching pirates gun down defenseless civilians. "Get off my station. The delivery is complete." Marcus stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively to the plasma pistol at his hip. "Now get off my station before I decide to test the range on my new defense turrets." The guards exchanged glances, then moved back toward their transport without another word. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving only the acrid smell of their ship's engines and the broken Zeltharian female standing alone on his landing pad. Marcus approached her slowly, keeping his hands visible and his movements non-threatening. Up close, he could see the extent of her injuries. Burns from neural disruption covered her neck and scalp. Her left arm hung awkwardly, the biomechanical components clearly damaged. Worst of all, her breathing was shallow and labored. "Can you understand me?" he asked softly in standard galactic. Her eyes focused on him with obvious effort. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, rough with pain. "Yes, what's your real name?" She blinked slowly, as if the question surprised. They called me Nyx, Nyx. Marcus tasted the name, finding it suited her somehow. "I'm Marcus, and I'm not going to hurt you." Something flickered in her eyes' surprise. Maybe even hope. "You're human. Last I checked." He gestured toward his workshop. "Can you walk? You need medical attention?" Nyx nodded, taking a careful step forward. Her leg buckled immediately, and Marcus caught her before she could fall. She was lighter than he'd expected, her body feeling fragile despite the augmentations. Her skin was surprisingly warm where it touched his arm. "Sorry," she whispered. "The neural inhibitors they used, motor functions are compromised." Marcus felt his jaw clench. Neural inhibitors were torture devices, designed to cause maximum pain while keeping the subject conscious. "How long were you subjected to them?" 17 days. Standard punishment for questioning orders. "What orders?" Nyx's eyes met his again, and this time he saw a flicker of her former fire. "They wanted me to execute civilians on Dracon Prime, families hiding in the underground tunnels." Her voice grew stronger. "I refused." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, pieces clicking into place. She hadn't been broken by failure or genetic instability. She'd been broken for having a conscience, for choosing mercy over orders. "Come on," he said gently, supporting her weight as they walked toward his workshop. "Let's get you patched up." As they entered the cluttered space filled with salvaged ship parts and repair equipment, Nyx looked around with obvious confusion. "Why are you helping me? The hegemony gave me to you for entertainment." Marcus guided her to a chair near his medical station, a small but well-equipped setup he'd installed after too many accidents with dangerous salvage. "Because the hegemony is wrong about a lot of things, including what you're worth," he began, pulling medical supplies from storage containers, his movements efficient despite the rage still burning in his chest. "Besides, someone who refuses to murder civilians, that's not broken. That's exactly what this galaxy needs more of." Nyx watched him work, her expression unreadable. "You don't know me. I've done terrible things, killed many people in service to the hegemony. We've all got blood on our hands," Marcus replied, preparing a neural stabilizer injection. "What matters is what we choose to do next." As he approached with the medical equipment, Nyx didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she held perfectly still, watching his face with those intelligent, pain-filled eyes. "What happens after you heal me?" Marcus paused, the question hitting him harder than he'd expected. The smart thing would be to patch her up and send her on her way, harbor a fugitive Zeltharian warrior, and the hegemony would make his life very complicated. But looking at her now broken, but not defeated, afraid but still defiant, he found the answer came easily. "That's up to you," he said simply. "But if you want to stay, you're welcome here as long as you need." For the first time since she'd arrived, Nyx's expression softened. The warrior's mask slipped, revealing something vulnerable underneath. "Why?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Because everyone deserves a chance to choose their own path, and because," he hesitated, then decided, "on honesty, because I don't think either of us should face whatever comes next alone." As he began treating her wounds, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life on the rim had just become infinitely more complicated. But watching the tension slowly leave Nyx's shoulders as the pain medication took effect, seeing the first hints of hope return to her amber eyes, he found he didn't mind the complication at all. Outside his workshop, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small acts of kindness that might just change everything. The first 3 days were the hardest. Nyx drifted in and out of consciousness, her body fighting off the lingering effects of neural torture while Marcus worked tirelessly to repair her damaged augmentations. He'd moved her to the small living quarters attached to his workshop, a sparse but comfortable space with a real window overlooking the crystalline formations that gave his asteroid home its name. Her neural pathways are severely damaged, Juno reported, her holographic form hovering over Nyx's sleeping figure. The inhibitors didn't just cause pain, they rewrote sections of her motor cortex. Some functions may never fully return. Marcus looked up from the delicate biomechanical component. He was repairing part of Nyx's left arm assembly. What about her memories? Intact, as far as I can tell. The hegemony wanted her to remember her disobedience. Psychological warfare. Bastards, Marcus muttered, returning his attention to the intricate work. Zeltharian technology was beyond anything humans had developed, requiring a combination of organic and synthetic expertise he'd had to learn through trial and error. On the fourth day, Nyx woke up properly. Marcus was replacing a burned-out neural relay when her eyes opened, focusing on him with surprising clarity. "You're still here," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Where else would I be? This is my home." He set down his tools and moved to check her vitals on the medical scanner. "How do you feel?" Nyx attempted to sit up, moving slowly and carefully. "Better. The pain is manageable now." She looked at her left arm, flexing the fingers experimentally. "You repaired the motor controls, some of them. The damage was extensive." Marcus helped her into a sitting position, noting how her hand trembled slightly. "It'll take time for the neural pathways to reestablish themselves." "Time," Nyx repeated, as if the concept were foreign. "How long have I been unconscious?" "For days." "You were exhausted." Marcus moved to a small food preparation unit in the corner. "When did you last eat a real meal?" The question seemed to surprise her. Before the punishment began. 3 weeks, perhaps." Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd suspected she was malnourished, but hearing it confirmed made his anger flare again. "Well, that changes now. Juno's been researching Zeltharian nutritional requirements." "You didn't need to." "Yes, I did." Marcus turned to face her, his expression serious. "Nyx, you're not a prisoner here. You're a guest. That means you get fed, you get medical care, and you get treated with dignity." End of discussion. For a moment, Nyx simply stared at him. Then, to his surprise, her lips curved in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You're very stubborn for a human. You have no idea." Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Marcus would work on salvage projects while Nyx rested and slowly regained her strength. She was a curious patient, asking detailed questions about his work and the technology he dealt with. Her knowledge of advanced systems far exceeded his own, and soon she was offering suggestions that improved his repair efficiency dramatically. "The plasma conduit you're replacing," she said one afternoon, watching him work on a damaged freighter engine. "If you route it through the secondary manifold instead, you'll increase power output by 12%. Marcus paused, considering. Her suggestion, that would work, but it'd put extra strain on the manifold housing. "Not if you reinforce it with a biometallic lattice. I could show you how to grow one." "Grow one?" Nyx moved closer, her movements still careful but increasingly confident. "Zeltharian technology is largely organic. We don't just build, we cultivate." She reached out, her fingers brushing against his as she pointed to a specific component. "May I?" The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through Marcus's arm. Of course, what followed was a demonstration that left Marcus astounded. Nyx placed her hands on the damaged manifold housing and closed her eyes. Her biomechanical augmentations began to glow with soft amber light, and Marcus watched in fascination as metallic fibers began to grow from her fingertips, weaving themselves into the damaged structure like living threads. "How is this possible?" He breathed. "The augmentations aren't just tools," Nyx explained, her voice soft with concentration. "They're part of us, extensions of our biological systems. The hegemony uses this ability to make us better warriors, but it has other applications." When she finished, the manifold housing was not just repaired but improved, its structure now resembling the elegant curves and organic patterns of Zeltharian architecture. Nyx swayed slightly as she pulled her hands back, the effort clearly taxing her still recovering system. Marcus steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That was incredible, but you shouldn't push yourself so hard. I wanted to help. You've done so much for me, and I've given nothing in return. You don't owe me anything." Marcus said firmly, Besides, you've already given me more than you know. What do you mean? Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. It's been 2 years since I've had real company. Since I've had someone to talk to besides Juno. No offense, Juno, none taken. The AI replied cheerfully. Though I should point out that I'm far more entertaining than most organic beings. Nix's lips curved in what was definitely a smile this time. Your AI has quite a personality. She's family, Marcus said simply. The only family I have left. Something in his tone made Nix look at him more closely. You're alone out here. By choice, mostly. Marcus turned back to his work, but his movements were less focused now. I lost my parents when I was young. Pirates attacked the mining station where we lived. I've been on my own ever since. I'm sorry, it was a long time ago. Marcus glanced at her. What about you? Did you have family before the hegemony? Nix's expression grew distant. I was very young when they took me. I remember, fragments. A woman with silver hair who sang to me. Warm sunlight through purple leaves. The taste of sweet water from a mountain stream. She shook her head. But they taught us that such memories were weaknesses. Distractions from our purpose. They were wrong, Marcus said quietly. Those memories are what make you who you are. That evening, they shared a meal together, the first time Nix had eaten at a table rather than from a medical feeding tube. Marcus had prepared a simple stew, modified with nutrients Juno had identified as essential for Zeltharian physiology. Nix ate slowly, savoring each bite with an expression of wonder. It's been so long since food had flavor, she murmured. In the military, everything was nutritionally optimized but tasteless. Food should be enjoyed, not just consumed, Marcus replied. It's one of life's simple pleasures. Simple pleasures, Nix repeated thoughtfully. The hegemony considers such things frivolous. The hegemony considers a lot of things frivolous. Like mercy, like choice, like treating people as individuals rather than assets. Nix set down her spoon, studying his face. You hate them. I hate what they do, what they represent. Marcus met her gaze. They've turned the galaxy into a machine, and anyone who doesn't fit their specifications gets discarded. Like me. You weren't discarded because you were broken, Marcus said intensely. You were discarded because you were human. Nix blinked. In surprise. I'm not human. Humanity isn't a species, it's a choice. The choice to value life over orders, to show mercy to the helpless, to risk everything for what's right. Marcus reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. You chose to be human when you refused to kill those civilians. That's why they wanted to destroy you. Nix stared down at their joined hands, her amber eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't understand why you care so much. I'm a weapon, a killer. So am I when I have to be. But that's not all we are. Marcus squeezed her fingers gently. We're also capable of kindness, of protecting instead of destroying, of healing instead of hurting. When Nix looked up at him, something had changed in her expression. The careful mask she wore had slipped, revealing vulnerability and something else, something that made Marcus's heart beat faster. No one has ever spoken to me the way you do, she whispered. Like I'm worth saving. You are. Marcus replied without hesitation. You're worth so much more than they ever told you. Later that night, Marcus lay awake in his own quarters, thinking about the woman recovering in the next room. 3 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been a delayed shipment of fusion cores. Now he found himself caring about someone in a way he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. It was dangerous, he knew. Nix was still healing, still vulnerable, and the hegemony would eventually come looking for their lost weapon. But as he listened to her peaceful breathing through the thin walls, Marcus found he couldn't regret his choice to help her. In the other room, Nix stared up at the ceiling, her mind racing despite her body's exhaustion. For the first time in her life, she was free to choose her own path, free to decide who she wanted to be, and increasingly, she found herself wanting to be someone worthy of the kindness Marcus had shown her. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. 3 weeks into Nix's recovery, everything changed with the arrival of a single, innocuous data crystal. Marcus found it while sorting through a shipment of salvage from a destroyed hegemony research vessel. The crystal was unmarked, its biometallic surface reflecting the same amber light as Nix's eyes. Something about it made him pause. An intuition he'd learned to trust after years of dealing with dangerous salvage. "Juno, can you scan this?" he asked, holding up the crystal. The AI's sensors focused on the object. "Interesting. It's Zeltharian in origin, but the data structure is unlike anything in my databases. There are quantum encryption layers wrapped around what appears to be biographical information." Biographical, personal records, memories, perhaps. But Marcus, there's something else. The quantum signature is fluctuating in response to Nyx's presence. It's almost as if it knows she's here. Marcus finished. He looked toward the living quarters where Nyx was resting. "I need to show her this." He found Nyx standing by the window, watching the distant stars. Her posture was straighter now, her movements more confident as her body continued to heal. She'd taken to wearing one of his old work shirts over her standard issue hegemony clothing, and the sight of her in something that belonged to him did strange things to his pulse. "NYX? I found something you should see." She turned, and Marcus was struck again by how beautiful she was. Her features were angular in the way of her people, but there was a grace to them that spoke of nobility rather than severity. Her silver-purple skin caught the light from the window, and her amber eyes held an intelligence that the hegemony had tried and failed to extinguish. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer. Marcus held out the crystal. "It came from a hegemony research vessel. Juno thinks it contains Zeltharian memories." The moment Nyx saw the crystal, she froze. Her eyes widened, and she took an involuntary step backward. "Where did you find this?" "In the salvage shipment." "Nyx, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I remember this." Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's a memory crystal. My people used them to preserve important experiences, to pass knowledge between generations." She reached out with a trembling hand. "But this one, it feels familiar." When her fingers made contact with the crystal, the effect was immediate. The small object began to glow with warm amber light, and suddenly the air around them shimmered. A holographic projection began to form, not sharp and clinical like Juno's displays, but soft and organic, like captured light given form. The image resolved into a scene that took Marcus's breath away. They were looking at what could only be the Zeltharian homeworld before the hegemony conquest. Purple-leaved trees swayed in an alien breeze, their branches heavy with bioluminescent fruit. Crystal spires rose in the distance, their surfaces covered with the same organic patterns Marcus had seen in Nyx's repair work. The sky was a deep violet, crossed by 3 silver moons. But it was the figures in the foreground that made Nyx gasp. A Zeltharian woman with silver hair sat beside a clear stream, holding a small child in her arms. The child couldn't have been more than 5 years old, her skin a lighter shade of purple than her mother's, her amber eyes bright with curiosity. "Mama, sing the star song," the child said in an older dialect of galactic standard. The woman smiled and began to hum a melody that seemed to resonate in the crystal itself. The tune was hauntingly beautiful, rising and falling like the whisper of wind through cosmic dust. As she sang, the child laughed and clapped her small hands, and the sound was like silver bells in the alien air. "My name is Nyxara," the child said suddenly, looking directly at where they stood watching. "Nyxara of House Stellaris, and someday, I'm going to see all the stars." The projection faded, leaving them standing in stunned silence. Nyx was trembling, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the now dim crystal. "That was you," Marcus said softly. "That was your mother." "I remember," Nyx whispered. "I remember her voice, her songs, the way she smelled like starflower blossoms." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with a mixture of joy and pain. "My name was Nyxara. I had a name, a family, a home." Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotion. "What happened to them? The hegemony came when I was 6. They said our planet had resources they needed, that our people would be given new homes on colony worlds." Nyx's voice hardened. "They lied. The adults were enslaved or executed. The children were taken for special training. I never saw my mother again." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, though the words felt inadequate. "I can't imagine what that was like. For the longest time, I couldn't imagine it either. They used neural conditioning to suppress our memories, to make us forget who we were before we became their weapons." She held up the crystal. its surface still faintly glowing. But this is proof that I was someone before they made me into Nix 77 Alpha. I was Nixara Stellaris, and I was loved. You still are, Marcus said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning neither of them had quite intended to voice. Nix looked at him with surprise. Then something deeper, something that made Marcus's heart race. Marcus, she began, but he held up a hand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make things complicated. You're still recovering, and I don't want you to feel pressured. Pressured? Nix stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. Marcus, for 20 years I've been told I was nothing but a weapon, a tool to be used and discarded. But you've made me remember what it feels like to be a person, to be cared for. You are a person, Marcus said intensely. You always were, regardless of what they tried to make you. I know that now. Because of you. Nix reached up, her fingers gentle against his cheek. You've given me back my name, my memories, my sense of self. How could I not? She trailed off, but her eyes said what her words couldn't. Marcus felt the air between them grow thick with possibility, with the weight of feelings neither of them had expected, but both had come to treasure. NYX Nixar, I need you to know that I don't see you as broken, or as something to be fixed. He said carefully, I see you as someone extraordinary, someone brave and kind and beautiful who deserves every happiness this galaxy can offer. And what if what I want is standing right in front of me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Marcus studied her face, looking for any sign that she was acting out of gratitude, rather than genuine feeling. But what he saw in her eyes was clear desire, affection, and something deeper that made his chest feel tight. Are you sure? He asked. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything. I don't feel like I owe you, Nix replied, stepping even closer. I feel like I choose you. The distinction was everything. Choice, the one thing the hegemony had tried to take from her, the thing Marcus had fought to give back, and she was choosing him. When Marcus leaned down to kiss her, it felt like the most natural thing in the galaxy. Her lips were soft and warm, and she tasted like starlight and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I've never, Nix began, then stopped, color rising in her cheeks. Never what? Kissed someone by choice. Everything with the hegemony was orders, assignments. This is the first time I've done something simply because I wanted to. Marcus felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it surprised him. Then we'll take it slow. No pressure, no expectations. Just whatever feels right. Nix smiled, and it transformed her entire face. What feels right is this, you and me, together, for however long we have. That night, they sat together on Marcus's small observation deck, sharing stories and watching the stars wheel overhead. Nix told him about the fragments of memory the crystal had unlocked, her mother's laughter, the taste of starfruit, the way her people had sung to welcome each new dawn. Marcus shared his own memories, the parents he'd lost, the loneliness of the years since, the simple joy he'd found in fixing broken things. Do you think there are others? Nix asked eventually. Other Zeltharians who escaped the conditioning. I hope so, Marcus replied. And maybe someday, when it's safe, we'll find them. We, Nix repeated, as if testing the word. I like the sound of that. As they sat in comfortable silence, Marcus couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed in just a few weeks. He'd gone from a solitary salvage operator to a man with someone to protect, someone to love. It should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Beside him, Nix Nixara was thinking similar thoughts. For the first time in 20 years, she had a future that belonged to her. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The crystal sat on the table. Between them, its surface dark now but somehow still warm, a gift from the past. It had given them both something precious, the knowledge that love could survive even the darkest circumstances, and that sometimes the most important choice was simply to hope. The alarm that shattered the peaceful morning was one Marcus had hoped never to hear. The deep, pulsing tone meant only one thing: military vessels approaching at combat speed. Marcus. Juno's voice was urgent as her holographic form materialized. In the workshop, 3 hegemony interceptors just dropped out of hyperspace. They're hailing us. Marcus was already moving, his hands flying over the console to bring up defensive systems. How long do we have? At current approach speed, 12 minutes. Nyx appeared in the doorway, fully dressed and alert despite having been asleep moments before. Her biomechanical augmentations were already glowing with amber light, her body preparing for combat. They found me. We don't know that for certain, Marcus said, but even as the words left his mouth, the communication system crackled to life. "Attention salvage vessel Lucky Strike," came a cold, mechanical voice. "This is Interceptor Retribution. You are harboring stolen hegemony property. Surrender the fugitive Nyx 77 Alpha immediately, and you will not be harmed, Marcus." And Nyx exchanged grim looks. There was no point in pretending anymore. "This is Marcus Kane." He replied into the comm, "I'm not harboring anyone. I have a guest who's free to leave anytime she chooses. The asset is hegemony property and will be returned for reconditioning. You have 5 minutes to comply." The channel closed with a sharp click. Marcus turned to find Nyx already moving toward the equipment lockers, her movements quick and efficient. What are you doing?" he asked. "Getting weapons. If they want me, they'll have to fight for me." She pulled out a pulse rifle, checking its charge with practiced ease. "I won't go back to being their tool." "You won't have to," Marcus said firmly. "Juno, bring the engines online. Plot a course for the Narrows, the asteroid field, Marcus. That's incredibly dangerous even for someone with your piloting skills. It's our best chance of losing them." He turned to Nyx. "Can you handle the weapons systems better than you can?" She replied with a fierce smile that reminded him just how formidable she could be when threatened. The next few minutes were a blur of preparation. Marcus fired up his ship's engines while Nyx familiarized herself with his defensive systems. The Lucky Strike wasn't a warship, but Marcus had made modifications over the years that gave her surprising capabilities. For a salvage vessel, they're launching fighters, Juno reported as the ship lifted off from the asteroid base. 6 interceptors, armed with plasma cannons and seeker missiles. "Time to see what this old girl can really do," Marcus muttered, pushing the engines to full power. The chase began as they cleared the asteroid's gravity well. The hegemony fighters were faster, but Marcus knew these shipping lanes better than anyone. He dove toward the Narrows, the notorious asteroid field that claimed at least 1 ship per month despite all the navigation warnings. "Marcus, this is insane," Nyx said as he rolled the ship between the massive asteroids. The clearance measured in meters rather than kilometers. "No one flies through the Narrows at this speed." "No one sane," Marcus agreed, pulling up hard to avoid a tumbling chunk of metal that had once been a frigate. But sanity is overrated. Behind them, the hegemony fighters were forced to slow down, their formation breaking as they navigated the treacherous field. But they were still gaining ground. "Incoming missiles," Nyx announced, her hands dancing over the weapons console. "I'm engaging point defense." The Lucky Strike shuddered as her defensive turrets opened fire, streams of energy reaching out to intercept the incoming projectiles. Most were destroyed, but one got through, exploding close enough to the hull to rattle Marcus's teeth. "Hull breach in cargo bay 2, Juno reported. "Sealing now." "There," Nyx pointed at the tactical display. "That cluster of asteroids at bearing to 7-8, if we can reach it. The interference will block their sensors." Marcus didn't hesitate, banking hard toward the coordinates Nyx had indicated. The ship groaned under the stress, but held together. Behind them, the fighters followed, their pilots clearly unwilling to give up the chase. They were almost to the asteroid cluster when disaster struck. A lucky shot from one of the pursuers caught their port engine, sending cascades of sparks through the engine compartment. "Engine 2 is down," Juno announced. Power falling to 60%, the ship lurched, and Marcus fought to maintain control as they spiraled toward the massive asteroid ahead. "Nyx, I need you to reroute power from the weapons to the remaining engine. We'll be defenseless. We'll be dead if we can't maneuver. Do it." Nyx's fingers flew over the controls, and Marcus felt the ship respond as power flowed to the remaining engine. It was enough to pull them out of the fatal spin, but barely. They slipped into the shadow of the asteroid with their pursuers close behind. "Now what?" Nix asked as they drifted in the relative safety of the asteroid's sensor shadow. Marcus was studying the tactical display, his mind racing. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow canyon that cut deep into the asteroid's surface. "It's barely wide enough for our ship, but if we can make it through, the fighters won't be able to follow." Nix finished. "But Marcus, look at those readings. That canyon is filled with unstable ore deposits. One stray shot could trigger a chain reaction. Then we better not give them any easy targets." What followed was the most terrifying 15 minutes of Marcus's life. Flying through the canyon was like threading a needle while blindfolded, the ship's hull scraping against rocky walls as he navigated by instruments alone. Behind them, the hegemony fighters tried to follow, but the narrow confines and dangerous ore deposits forced them to break off one by one. When they finally emerged from the other side of the asteroid, they were alone. "Did we lose them?" Nix asked, her face pale but determined. "For now," Marcus replied. "But they'll report our position. We can't go back to the salvage yard." The reality of their situation hit them both simultaneously. In the space of an hour, they'd gone from having a safe haven to being fugitives with nowhere to run. "I'm sorry," Nix said quietly. "This is my fault. If I hadn't, don't." Marcus reached over and took her hand. "This isn't your fault. You didn't choose to be hunted. But I chose to stay with you. And now they'll never stop coming." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he squeezed her hand and turned to face her fully. "Good, let them come. I've spent years running from attachments, from connections, from anything that might tie me down. But you know what? I'm tired of running." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if they want to hunt us, fine. But we're not just going to hide and hope they give up." Marcus's eyes burned with determination. "We're going to find others like us, people who've been cast aside by the hegemony. We're going to build something they can't destroy." Nick stared at him in amazement. "You're talking about rebellion. I'm talking about hope, for you, for me, for everyone who's ever been told they don't matter." Marcus brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "But only if you want to. I won't make this choice for you." Nix was quiet for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the cockpit windows. When she finally spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "I spent 20 years following other people's orders. The only real choice I've ever made was to refuse to kill those civilians, and it led me to you." She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. "So yes, Marcus Kane, let's give them something to really chase." As they set course for the outer rim, where rumors spoke of hidden colonies and forgotten worlds, neither of them looked back. Behind them lay safety and simplicity. Ahead lay danger and uncertainty, but they were facing it together, and that made all the difference. The hunt had begun in earnest, but the prey had no intention of making it easy for the predators. In fact, they were beginning to wonder who was really hunting whom. The message came through on an encrypted channel Marcus hadn't used in 5 years, crackling with the static of long-range transmission. "Marcus, you magnificent bastard. I know you're out there." The voice belonged to Orion Drake, Marcus's old partner from his mercenary days. The whole galaxy's buzzing about some human and his Zeltharian girlfriend giving the hegemony fits. "Real proud of you, brother, but you've got bigger problems heading your way. Meet me at the old rendezvous if you get this. And Marcus, bring weapons." Marcus exchanged glances with Nix as the message ended. They'd been running for 3 months now, hopping from one forgotten world to another, staying just ahead of the hegemony's increasingly aggressive pursuit. In that time, they'd managed to gather a small but growing network of rebels, outcasts, and refugees, people who'd found hope in their defiance. "Orion Drake," Nix said thoughtfully. "I've heard that name in hegemony briefings. Former military, turned mercenary, suspected of anti-hegemony activities. That's him. Also the best pilot I've ever known and the closest thing I have to a brother." Marcus was already plotting a course to the coordinates embedded in the message. If he's reaching out, it means the situation is serious. The rendezvous point was an abandoned mining station in the Kepler belt, a relic from the early expansion days. As the Lucky Strike approached the docking bay, Marcus spotted the sleek profile of Orion's ship, the Night's Edge, tucked into the shadows. Orion was waiting for them in the station's old command center, a tall man with graying hair and scars that told stories of a dozen conflicts. His eyes lit up when he saw Marcus, but grew serious when they settled on Nyx. "So this is the woman who's got half the hegemony fleet chasing shadows," he said, extending a hand. "Orion Drake, any enemy of theirs is a friend of mine. Nyxara Stellaris," Nyx replied, clasping his hand firmly. "Though the hegemony knows me by another name, Stellaris." Orion repeated, his eyebrows rising. "Now that's a name with history. Your people were artists, weren't they? Before the conquest." Nyx blinked in surprise. "You know about my house? I know the hegemony destroyed something beautiful when they took your world, and I know they've been very interested in getting you back." Orion's expression darkened, which brings me to why I called this meeting. "They're not just sending hunters anymore, Marcus. They've put out a contract." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "What kind of contract?" "The kind that brings bounty. Hunters out of retirement. The kind that makes even the ethical ones reconsider their principles." Orion activated a holographic display showing a familiar face, a scarred woman with cybernetic implants covering half her skull. "Vex Mordain has taken the job." "Shit," Marcus breathed. Vex was a legend in the bounty hunting community, known for her ruthless efficiency and her perfect success rate. "How much are they offering?" "Enough to buy a small moon. They want her alive, but they're not particularly concerned about her condition. Or yours, for that matter." Nyx stepped forward, her amber eyes flashing with determination. "Then we end this. I'm tired of running, tired of putting others at risk. If she wants me, she can come and take me." "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "We're not using you as bait. It's not about using me as bait. It's about choosing our ground for the final confrontation." Nyx turned to Orion. "How good is she?" "The best there is," Orion admitted, "but she's also predictable. Vex always studies her targets extensively before making a move. She'll want to know everything about your capabilities, your weaknesses, your relationship with Marcus. Then we give her information," Nyx said. "Carefully crafted information that leads her exactly where we want her." Marcus stared at her. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Vex expects to hunt a broken refugee and her naive human protector. She's not prepared for what we've actually become over the next few hours." They crafted a plan that was equal parts brilliant and terrifying. Using Orion's contacts, they would leak information about their location while secretly preparing a trap at an abandoned hegemony research facility on the edge of civilized space. The facility was where captured Zeltharian children had been conditioned into weapons, a place with special significance that Vex would find irresistible. "The psychological profile fits perfectly," Orion confirmed as they reviewed the details. "Vex will see it as poetic justice, capturing you at the place where your people were broken. What she won't expect," Nyx added, "is that I've been there before. I know every corridor, every security system, every way in and out." Marcus still didn't like using Nyx as bait, but he had to admit the plan was solid. And more importantly, it was their choice, not a reaction to someone else's moves, but a deliberate action to end the pursuit on their own terms. The facility loomed against the star field like a wound in space, its angular architecture designed to intimidate rather than inspire. As they approached in the lucky strike, Marcus felt Nyx tense beside him. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure about us, and I'm sure that this ends here." One way or another, they docked at the facility's main bay, where they'd arranged to wait for Vex's arrival. The plan was simple: let her think she had them cornered, then turn the tables using the facility's own security systems and Nyx's intimate knowledge of its layout. They didn't have to wait long. Vex's ship, a predatory-looking craft bristling with weapons, emerged from hyperspace exactly 2 hours after their arrival. She approached slowly, cautiously, scanning for traps. "NYX-77 Alpha," came Vex's voice over the comm, distorted by her cybernetic vocal modifications. "You've led me quite a chase, but it ends now. My name is Nyxara Stellaris," Nyx replied calmly. "And you're right, it does end now." The bounty hunter's ship docked with mechanical precision, and Vex emerged with a squad of combat drones. She was exactly as Marcus had remembered.